Volokholamsk district is a unique place in Russia. It was involved with all the key moments of the history of the country. For centuries, the city grew, traded and prayed, and sometimes even was at war. And all that 900-long stormy life was watched by a silent witness to the events of the past, the Kremlin Hill. And this long history made Volokholamsk the oldest town in the Moscow region. Volokholamsk always extended a warm welcome to all guests and met them as friends, in spite of difficult trials and hard times falling on his share. We will visit all the interesting places of this ancient land. We'll meet its people, we'll know about its economic potential and development opportunities. Cities often bear the names of the rivers on which they stand. In Russian, there is a word Volok. It means a place where watercrafts were carried overland from one river to another. In English, a place where this carrying occurs is also called a portage. Volok means portage in Russian, derives from the verb to drag. The name of the town Volokholamsk may be translated as the portage on the Lama River. That means the place where watercrafts were dragged into the river Lama. In ancient times, to the Slavs, the river was the center of their life and economic activity. We are on the banks of the Lama River. Here it flows into a small Gorodenka River. Originally, the old town was here, on the other side of the river. From this location, it was very convenient to monitor all the ships that passed both the northward and southward. There is a local legend that once these places were visited by Prince Yaroslav the Wise. He toured the most remote corners of the state and saw the city standing on the open banks. He didn't like that fact and he ordered to move the city on the steep hill 3 kilometers away. If this is truly a legend, it turns out that Volokholamsk was found much earlier than it considered officially. We cannot take the city founded in 1135 because the Yaroslav the Wise died in 1054 in Kiev. He could visit this place between 1019 and 1022. Our city is older 100 years at least. Official science also has data on which the history of the city begins with the 11th century. During the archaeological excavations in our archaeological expedition, we found the houses relating to the initial period of the city, streets, landscaping, palisades of 11th and 12th centuries, which were supplied by the Slavs who came here together with Prince's squad who was sent here to protect the city. The place near Volokholamsk, where watercrafts were carried from one river to another, connected basins of two large rivers, Oka and Volga River. Historians wonder where exactly the place where ships were dragged is. Here, the researchers can use toponymy, is the study of place names, their origins, meanings, use and typology. This village is called Ryukhovskoye. It comes from the Old Russian word ryukha. By this word, people here call a wooden cylinder like this. It is necessary for the Russian game Gorodki. And also, large same-sized timber is called ryukha, on which ships were strapped and dragged overland. Location of the village Ryukhovskoye points directly to the place where ships were dragged from Lava River into Volashnya River. This is especially observable from bird's eye view. Flying over the place where Lama and Volashnya are flowing parallel at a very short distance from each other. After a couple of kilometers, they go out, first one to the north, the other one to the south. Just here below us, there is a place where the ships were dragged from one river to another. These places in ancient times were surrounded by large forests. Then that was not difficult to find the logs to drag the ship. This road in ancient times were very busy. One of the richest cities of Russia in the Middle Ages is Novgorod, which is located to the north of the country. It is difficult to farm here, but it is convenient to trade. Therefore, Novgorod constantly sent convoys with merchants and druzhiniks, or Prat in southern principality resigned. And this road, among which merchants and druzhiniks were going, was held at the Volokholamsk plant. At this place, where there were an ancient forest, now the field has appeared. The forests spring have been plowed, and rivers where a few centuries ago there were ships have turned into small streams. But before, when local people got income from the track of ships, the river wasn't quite so wide and deep. And then Russians invented an original design of watercraft to make possible to travel among them. This tie trough was the basis of the ancient Russian ship. It was made of very thick wood. The diameter of the selected trunk often was more than 4 or 5 feet. In the side of the giant lock, an incision was made, and from there the core was dragged away. The thickness of the remaining sides was only a couple of inches. Then the boards were poured boiling water, heated on hot coals, afterward they became soft. After that they were spread in different directions, and aft and ship's head were made. On this little ship it was already possible to swim, but in order to increase its capacity, people attached the ribs, then the boards were fixed on them. So capacity was increased in 10-20 times, and it has little effect on patency on this kind of ship. It was flat-bottomed and had very little settlement. This is the best quality for ship to travel among so shallow rivers. Well, then, let's try to imagine how such an old boat like this once again makes a trip on the Lama River. And because of the flat bottom of these ships, it was convenient to carry them on planted logs. Speaking modern language, the place where the ships were dragged from one river to another was a serious transportation hub. In order to make it work, it was necessary to have a lot of people. Almost the entire population of Volokholamsk district was involved in the service of the side of the trade route. Locals laid out roads, cut and sawed the trees, and enclosed under ships, repaired them, kept horses, and dragged these vessels. And of course, they had to charge a fee from merchants who used it all. Therefore, there were governors first from Novgorod and later from Moscow. Without their permission, no one could move through the watershed. Even in the most difficult times, through this Volok from Novgorod to Ryazan was continuously flowing a ring and twinkle of silver. In the opposite direction, the golden stream of wheat. In the past, this road was not only busy but also fatal. A little Novgorod trading post on the banks on the Lama River, which controls an important part of this trade route, has played a very important role in the history of Russia. In ancient times, the city of Yaroslav, Rostov, Vladimir, Suzdal were the main centers of the northeast of Russia. Gradually, they lost power, and Tver and Moscow began to replace them in the life of the country. Both of the cities are on the waterway. It begins from Novgorod and ends in Ryazan. In the 14th century, these 4 cities were the main centers of power. In order to get from one city to another, you had to go through Volokholamsk. Moscow, for 100 years from small town lost in the woods, has become the capital of a large state. Its rulers consistently struggled with the robbers. It quickly brought results. Trade through Volokholamsk extended. The path from the southern Russian lands to Novgorod began to connect northern Europe with the countries of the Caspian Basin, Central Asia and Caucasus. And the wealth that passed through these places have led to a large number of military confrontations over the possession of these lands. These lands have always been on the border of several warring principalities. Therefore, there was always someone who fought with someone, and that if we don't take into account foreign invaders that often came to our land. Anyway, every quite large military conflicts in the Russian history affected this region. For a long time, the city was part of the Novgorod Principality. As soon as Moscow begins to gain strength, Volokholamsk almost instantly and painlessly forgets the former capital and joins her. We are in Staritsa district of Tver region. In 1317 there was a battle between the forces of Tver and Moscow princes. Historians call it Martinevskaya battle. In the battle, Volokholamsk town people fought on the Moscow side. And from that moment, Volokholamsk, in all conflicts, keeps only the Moscow side. Thus, and construction suffered many conquerors that passed over this place. They were Mongol troops of Batey Khan and the Lithuanian Grand Duke Olgierd. In the 14th century, the inhabitants of Volokholamsk of these shafts warded off the attack of Khan of the Golden Horde Tokhtamysh. In the 7th century, they warded off the Polish king Sigismund. In 1812, Volokholamsk peasants, united in guerrilla groups, fought with Napoleon's soldiers. During the Great Patriotic War, the defensive line of Moscow passes again through Volokholamsk land. Tiny army group protects against Nazi troops for 100 kilometers of the front. It consists of General Pamphilov Infantry Division and Cavalry Corps of General Dovatow. From 13,000 Pamphilov soldiers, 11,000 were killed here, and the general himself was killed here. The forces of the enemy were more than a few times, but the Russian soldiers, at the expense of their lives, stopped the enemy. Hitler's general's plans to make quick throw to Moscow were ruined. There are many monuments of Volokholamsk land that remind of these terrible and heroic events. For courage of its defense, Volokholamsk was given the title of City of Military Glory.
Главной причиной неудач всех завоевателей со времен Средневековья и до 20 века, приходивших на эту землю.
The main reason for the failure of all the conquerors that came to this land was the spirit of the defenders of Volokholamsk. Love to the native land presented the history and culture the great Russian educator, ascetic, and theological Joseph Volotsky. It all started here, 17 kilometers away from Volokholamsk, in the Yazvishi village. In the 15th century, this place was the estate of the noble Sanin family. In 1440, the owners of the village, John and Marina, had the fourth son, as well as many offspring of noble families of the time. When a boy was 7, he was given in a monastery for study. After graduating, John goes to the monk and takes the name Joseph. After several years in different monasteries, he decided to establish his own abode. Together with 7 like-minded monks, he returned to his native place of Volokholamsk and founded a monastery here. Saint Joseph built a monastic life under the new rules. To the strict prayer consuetudinary of the monastery was added leading a large monastic economy. Already during the life of Saint Joseph, the everyday work of the monks brought results. Volokholamsk land had a large crop failure and famine stars among the peasants, but a large farm of the monastery helped to avoid the terrible consequences of this disaster.
До 700 человек приходили в обитель с просьбой накормить и напоить.
Monastery fed daily about 700 people. The abbot Joseph opened all the stocks of the monastery to everyone who needed it. There wasn't enough bread even for the monks, but they continued to feed the starving people, so hundreds of lives were saved. He allowed to settle 50 children whose parents have died of starvation in the monastery. The monks took them to the full support and even opened a school for them and learned to read and write. The school for peasant children in the 15th century is really an incredible thing. Saint Joseph was very strict to himself. Under the monastic robe he wore a heavy iron chain. They are still in the cathedral of the monastery. He also became famous for his love of education. He brought up in his adobe a galaxy of hierarchs of the Orthodox Church. It is noteworthy that Russia's only museum of the Bible is here in Joseph Volokholamsk Monastery. Saint Joseph lived in a very interesting period in the history of Volokholamsk, and then ruler of the Russian Grand Prince of Moscow, Vasily II, left after his death several sons. The eldest son got the grand throne, and younger brothers got land and titles feudal princes. Volokholamsk became independent principality, and Prince Boris, the brother of the Russian monarch, became its ruler. Its Resurrection Cathedral of Volokholamsk, a strict and elegant building stand on top of the Kremlin hill. It was built in the late 15th century, and this is the main legacy that left a feudal Prince Boris. The cathedral in honor of the Christ's resurrection was built in 1480. It graces one of the hills of Volokholamsk, which is the highest place in the city since ancient times. From there, the administrative and spiritual life of this town began. Resurrection Cathedral was rebuilt many times, reconstructed and restored. In the 18th century, the bell tower was built on it. In the 9th century, St. Nicholas Cathedral was built near it. In the early 20th century, the cathedral square with fences. Under Soviet rule, Resurrection Cathedral was closed. A dozen years it was abandoned. At the end of the war, there is located a camp for prisoners of war. Then the cathedral was restored and he became part of museum complex. Today, the cathedral again serves as the main temple of Volokholamsk. Celebrations here are infrequent, only on the most solemn occasions. When the Resurrection Cathedral was just built, it was surrounded by wooden walls of Volokholamsk Kremlin. This fortress lasted until the late 17th century. After the time of troubles, it has lost its military significance, gradually decayed and collapsed. But in times of feudal principality, the Kremlin was constantly looked after. Not only the walls were strengthened, but the approaches to it. Survived until today, groundworks were specially noted by Empress Catherine II. Their symbolic image was placed on the coat of arms of Volokholamsk. The sconces of ancient forts are also on the modern coat of arms.
Волоколамск сохранился как удельное княжество совсем недолго.
Volokholamsk stayed independent principality not for a very long time, less than 100 years, and the special status of these lands was abolished. But the attitude of the Grand Princess to the Volokholamsk remained special. The family of Moscow rulers remained attitude toward Volokholamsk as domain, as personal property. This is indicated by the Nativity Church on the outskirts of modern Volokholamsk.
На стене церкви сохранилась хромозданная плита. По ней здание было построено в 1541 году. Однако
In the old days, while constructing of churches on stone slabs, a commemorative inscription was cut out. It said when construction began, when finished, and who led. Such stone is preserved in the Church of Nativity. It says that the temple was built in 1541. At that time, John IV was Grand Prince of Moscow. At the time of construction of the church, he was 11 years old child. This church was originally the main church not survived to the present-day monastery. In those days, the monasteries were rarely rich enough to build a stone church at their own expense. This monastery on the outskirts of Volokholamsk just was not rich, and the funds to build a stone church were given by the princely family. This special attitude toward Volokholamsk we can see right at the time when the Grand Prince himself, because of age, still couldn't take such decision personally. From the most interesting relics in the church frescoes of the 17th century is preserved. It depicts an unknown martyr.
Такие крупицы святой старины создают особое впечатление. Волоколамск
These pieces of antiquity create the special charm of these places. It is always quiet and peaceful. The spirit of the long history of just permits everyone who came here at least for an hour. This land was cultivated by generations of people who loved their homes, invest in them in considerable work. And Volokholamsk land, in response, presents generously its fruits.
И Волоколамская земля в ответ щедро одаривает людей своими плодами.
And there are a lot of places in the city now where you can feel like you travel in time and you totally plunge into the atmosphere of the old patriarchal life, and only passing cars will turn you in the present. The beauty of the local nature is naturally woven white temples, majestic monasteries and noble estates. This is a separate page of local places of interest. One of the most ancient noble estates of Volokholamsk region is Yaropolets village. There were the royal hunting grounds here in the 16th century. In the 17th century, a new, already aristocratic chapter in the history of this village begins.
В 17 веке начинается новая, уже дворянско-усадебная глава истории этого села. Здесь, в центре села, стоит довольно необычная постройка. Это сень над могилой одного из
This is an unusual building at the center of the village. This is a chapel over the tomb of former owner of Yaropolets, headman of Ukraine Petro Doroshenko. During his life in the 17th century, one half of the Ukraine was under Polish rule, the other was under the control of Russia. Doroshenko wanted his country to be independent, and for his dream chose the Ottoman Empire as a ally. But the Turks, instead of helping, just ruined the Ukraine and took tens of thousands of its inhabitants into slavery. People rebelled against the hetman, overthrew him, and swore allegiance to Russia. The Tsar of Moscow first sent Doroshenko in brief transportation and then granted him the village where the hetman spent the rest of his life. Here he became the father of a daughter and 3 sons. One of his successors sold his part of the estate to the nobles Chernyshov family. The manor that they built there was considered one of the richest houses in the old Moscow region. Empress Catherine II stayed there for several times. In honor of her visit, a memorial stele was built in the manor park. The Chernyshov's estate temple is a unique building. Such other one temple Russian church architecture doesn't know. Another part of the village was left for descendants of Doroshenko, however, the female line. Hetman's granddaughter was Natalia Goncharova, wife of the great Russian poet Alexander Pushkin, who stayed in Yaropolets. Also, this village is the cradle of the Russian power industry. Here, in 1918, a water mill was converted into a powerhouse. Then, for the first time in Russia, in the homes of the peasants, pubs were lit. The real powerhouse was built after Vladimir Lenin's visit in this village. In this powerhouse lived 22 villages up and worked until the Second World War. The noble estates deprived their hosts because of the revolution, gradually fell into decay. Now, in the Moscow region, there is intensive work to raise funds for the restoration of abandoned estates. This historical wealth should be the basis of economic well-being of Volokholamsk region. The government of district makes a serious bid for the development of tourism infrastructure and attracting investors to it. With such a rich historical heritage, during tours of Volokholamsk land, every minute counts. Fast food is an irreplaceable thing for all tourists who want to explore as much place of interest as possible. Here in Volokholamsk you can try a real Russian fast food. Hello, could you give me 3 traditional Russian pirozhok with meat, fish and eggs? Everything is cooked right here. Everything is very tasty, hot, fresh and very comfortable during the trip. So, how much is it? It's €1. And it is not expensive. Thanks a lot. Goodbye. If someone wants to have proper dinner, you can visit any of the many local cafes and restaurants. Volokholamsk district offers a variety of hotels of different levels of comfort and price category. They are conveniently located all around the district. In Volokholamsk there are a lot of places for active recreation. This is the largest racing rink in central Russia, Moscow Raceway. Everyone can feel the speed and squeeze as much as possible out of his car on this track. Even for those who like to relax in peace, surrounded by nature, there is a campsite and fishing. Unforgettable impressions are also guaranteed. Besides the usual trout and carp in local basins, there are rare species of fish that are found in the wild only in the northern rivers of Siberia. And also there is a farm with tame deer, fallow deer and Cameroonian goats. This could be an unusual addiction to fishing. People living in big cities can go for a few days and live leisurely in slow-paced peasant life and escape from the city. In the Volokholamsk district there are a few eco-farms. Here kids from big cities can inquire where, for example, milk comes from, and they themselves can participate in the care of the most diverse village animals. Volokholamsk region has always been an agrarian region. They are successfully working both small farmers and large agriculture enterprises. Investment in agriculture area are particularly advantageous because, in addition to an impressive market of Moscow region, and Moscow itself also located near here in its 15 million consumers. The district has good prospects for industrial development. There is a railway connecting the capital of Russia with Baltic and with ports of northwest region of Russia. Also here is the Federal Speedway Moscow-Riga. Also, several industrial enterprises successfully operate in Volokholamsk district. Each company located on the territory of Volokholamsk district provides maximum opportunities for development.
Мы создали Центр поддержки предпринимательства, инвестиционного развития и туризма.
We have created a center of support of business, investment, and tourism development. We build the technology of passing documents to help businesses and for investment projects. We have an understanding of how to interact in this regard with the relevant ministries and departments of the Moscow region. And most importantly, everyone who is responsible for this work clearly knows what to do.
Каждый, кто отвечает за эту работу, четко знает, что ему делать.
Support of local businesses and preservation of cultural heritage are the two focuses around which Volokholamsk district develops. Each of these activities is equally important component of the investment attractiveness of the area, a guarantee of the future prosperity. Volokholamsk region is a place where antiquity and modernity intersect. It is a land with rich history and huge potential for development. Here it's good to rest and interesting to live and convenient to do business. Volokholamsk awaits guests.